mi- This company had a mission statement to be a world-class primary aluminum smelter. Maybe they were world-class. I worked for a brewing company. Their mission statement to be a world-class brewer and marketer of fine quality beers. Maybe they were world-class. But if you ask the people, they didn't really understand. I listened to a recording recently from the great Robin Sharma on YouTube, and he was talking about the things we should do to become world class. So obviously, he knows what it means. There must be a meaning, and I'm hoping today to try and explain what that meaning is. I don't believe it is best in class. I live in South Africa. Our post office here gives us dreadful service. I've been listening to Donald Trump for the past few weeks, challenging the postal votes in the United States and reading about the problems with the American post office. Maybe there is no world-class post office in the world. Maybe it doesn't even mean best in class. I Googled top mission statements for top companies last week, and I don't see world class as a term being used anymore. So, where does it come from? The first usage, according to the dictionary, was as recent as 1939. But the origin in our context, in business, was in the 1970s and 1980s. In those days, Japan had global dominance. The world came up with much fake news as to why they were achieving this. They said, yeah, they were lucky. They were bombed during World War II. They have new machines. In the United States, we have old machines. In Europe, we have old machines. They argued that the work ethic in Japan was so good compared with the West. They argued that the Japanese were paid less. But those were not the reasons for Japanese superiority. This term, world class, or world class manufacturing, consultants loved it. Consultants love a new word like this. They don't let an opportunity go to waste. They all wanted piece of the action. Books by Huge on world-class manufacturing and by Schonberger on world-class manufacturing. They established the name. But I don't believe that we can throw all that early work out. Today, we have new ideas. But if we forget what happened in the past, we will build on a weak foundation. We must understand the principles of world class and study the history. I was at university in Scotland. Our university had a very successful department teaching medieval history. Now I ask you, medieval history? Why should so many people study the past, not the present and the future? But you know, if you look up the internet, you will find 94 British members of parliament studied history at university. Santayama says, anyone who doesn't study the faults of the past is condemned to repeat them. Today, we must understand the journey that industry has traveled from the 1970s to today before we move forward. So let's go back to those early days. My first visit to a business school was in the 1970s, long time ago. In my first business school, they taught us things like Peter Drucker and John Humble, Management by Objectives. Very good stuff. They taught us that the job of a manager was to plan, organize, lead, control. In the late 1970s, Porter came in with his 5 forces. This is what they taught at business schools. Fantastic. But we weren't catching up with the Japanese. We were falling behind. So this was not the secret. This was not the magical secret that the Japanese had found that gave them success. As I said, these were not the magical secrets. Any practitioner today has got to study what actually did happen before he contemplates using the tools of today. I was headhunted in the late 1980s to join a company, and their goal was to help them to become world-class. I asked them, what is this world-class manufacturing? They said, I don't know. Your job is to find out. That's why we're paying you. They explained to me that for 10 years, they had been putting in new technology, training better people, correcting all their mistakes they thought, and they had the same amount of waste, the same downtime, the same scrap, the same efficiencies. They had not found the secret. I was lucky in the early 1990s to visit a Japanese watch company. They had a 35-year-old machinery, and they were making watches in Japan. They decided it was time for new technology. They built a new factory in Singapore. This new factory had more modern technology, and it had lower wages than they paid in Japan. A few years later, they built another factory in China. The Chinese factory had more modern technology and cheaper wages for the staff. Which factory was most efficient? The original one in Japan. There was a secret to this world class that we had yet to discover. I had read the books that were coming out at the time, books by Suzaki, the new shop floor management. They showed images from Japanese companies. Our Western companies didn't look like that. So we called in consultants. The first group were great. They gave us so much academic insight. We understood all these Japanese philosophies, we thought, but we didn't know how to implement them in a practical way. So we changed consultancy. We got a new consultancy. They were even better. They were even working with Japanese companies. We were so impressed. We spoke to our major material suppliers, and we said, you must run with us. This is wonderful. After 18 months, we spoke to our suppliers, and we asked, how is it? And they said, oh, this is so exciting. We love it. Are you getting results? No. Neither were we. With the benefit of hindsight, we now know we were making so many mistakes. We were learning. Consultants were learning. Our journey was only now about to begin. Let me take you down that journey. Step one in the West was to standardize the way we produce things. Companies implemented ISO 9000. And later we had ISO 14,000 and so on. And at least now we had a standard. We did things the right way. We didn't compete with Japanese, but that was the start. Then we moved forward. We read books like Suzaki's book, and Suzaki told us that every team in an organization must have goals that are structured around quality, cost, delivery, safety, and morale. Now we use different words, but same principle. Total Quality Management, TQM, had taught us 40 years ago that quality was everyone's job, not just the quality department. Suzaki now told us safety is everyone's job. Cost management is everyone's job. So one of the key elements is that every team needs these goals. Only then do we get goal alignment. Having goals is okay, but you need to know what to do to achieve them. And that was where they started to introduce best practices. Best practices like TPM, 5S, just in time, quick changeover, SMED, all these things you can buy books on these days. At the same time, Toyota was trying to work out, what is the magic? Toyota was producing cars all around the world, but the best, the most efficient were in Japan. Why? What was different? Jeffrey Liker, working for Fujio Cho, the chairman of Toyota, he started tackling the same challenge. Why are we different? Simultaneously, Womack and Jones were studying it for the Lean Institute. Ballet and Ballet have written books. Everyone was trying to work out, why are these people so good? So the next major learning was that to become world-class, we've got to involve process improvement and involvement of people. The company I worked for, I was an internal consultant initially. We had a continuous improvement department studying all this. That's where I worked. But there was another department related to HR that looked at performance management and recruitment, and they were completely separate. What Toyota had realized is that these are both parts of the same drive. These two regiments should be in the same army. The Toyota production system brought them all together. We realized that we needed empowerment of the front line. We needed two-way communication. We needed to ask people what they think. If something went wrong in our sales office, in our finance department, we ask the people, what is wrong? At 1 a.m. last year, on the 24th of September, just before Christmas, I heard something while I was lying in bed. I switched the light on and we had hot water coming through the ceiling. My hot water tank had broken. I have a PhD, I have tools in the garage. I had no idea what to do. I called the plumber. Fortunately, he arrived in less than an hour, corrected the problem, and the next day he replaced the tank. In South Africa, we have many poor people. They live in homes unlike mine, exactly the same I've seen in South America. Their homes are made of corrugated iron and plastic sheets. And if the wife hears a leak in the roof from the rain, she says to her husband, the roof is leaking, and he fixes it. You don't need a PhD and tools to be smart. You need common sense. And Toyota recognized that we've got to show respect to these people at the front line. They have the common sense. Today, Toyota is represented in 18 countries. It has joint ventures in another 10. The first Toyota in South Africa was produced in 1961 the Toyota Stout. We should have been learning many years earlier. So that was the second big breakthrough. Listen to your people. Move. This was the old organization. When something goes wrong at the front, the industrial engineer, the production manager comes in and he says, do this, don't do that. That's not what a world-class company looks like. A world-class company looks like this. That was a major breakthrough. In the book, The Toyota Way, Jeffrey Liker introduces the 4 Ps and the 14 principles. And he says that these are core elements of world class. The first P is purpose. Your organization must have a purpose. We are here to help society. If your mission statement says, our goal is to get 50% market share, or our goal is to get 2 billion lempiras turnover, that won't excite your workers. The goal must be something that helps society so the workers buy in. The second P, we need systems which will listen to our people, treat them with respect. What we call servant leadership. We work for them, not the other way around. Now we're ready for process improvement. Our mistake all those years earlier was to start with process. That wasn't world class. Once we start implementing these processes, now we're ready. Now we're ready to start problem solving. And that is important. I know many companies where the senior management meeting, they invite in department heads and they brag about their successes. If you visit Hyundai or Toyota, they don't brag about their successes. Management assumes you will be successful. They bring their problems because these are the areas where management must help. And management says, good for you. You have highlighted improvement opportunities. Now, whatever you are doing in 2020, all of these basics must be in place. The next important book was written also by Liker and is called Toyota Talent. It looks at how Toyota recruits and develops their staff. It looks at career development. It looks at succession planning. Things that are absent in so many companies today, where a manager leaves and he leaves a hole. Step 6, changing the culture of the organization. Our primary role in a world-class company is to develop our people, not to make money. And if we have to stop the plant to address an issue, we do so. If we develop our people, then those people will make money in future. I know that Toyota doesn't like Six Sigma very much because they argue Six Sigma is focused too much on bottom line profit and doesn't focus enough on the people. Once you have the world-class company in place, now you can make the money. The last one going up on this is the establishment of a continuous improvement culture. My favorite book on this topic is by Mike Rother, who published a book called Toyota Kata. The first half of the book looks at a continuous improvement culture. Everything we do must be better than it was yesterday. And the second half of the book looks at the role that managers have as coaches. So when a worker is struggling, we don't go and say, this is the way you do it. You ask him, so what are you doing and what are the results? How might you do it differently? What results might you expect? What results are your clients looking for? What changes do you think we should make? This we call inside-out coaching. And our worker starts to think for himself, and he's well on the way now to world class. These core elements are absolutely essential. So we ask, are we nearly there yet? We've put everything in place. Unfortunately, the answer is no. We have just reached the starting line. In some companies, it might take weeks or months. In some, it will take years to put these basic cultural things in place. We will encounter other problems on the way. One of the problems we encounter is that the original work was called world-class manufacturing. And we've got to realize that the same principles apply for finance, sales, marketing, IT, mining, supply chain, whatever. I was in a client in Bogota, and the CEO announced that he was changing the name of the program from Manufactura de Clase Mundial to Empresa de Clase Mundial. He said, we've got to understand this. And that, my friends, is the job of your continuous improvement department. It's putting this culture in place. World-class companies are reflected by their values and their culture. And you can feel it when you walk into the company. Not by the money they make and not by the tools that they're using. When you walk in there, you will see a focus on improvement instead of conformance. You will see discipline in execution. People don't agree to actions if they cannot deliver. You will see interaction with all stakeholders. You will see people working in value streams, not in silos. You'll see people with a sense of purpose. Now you're nearly ready. But you never get good news without bad news as well, I'm afraid. Scary statistics. 70% of change initiatives do not work. Now, there are many reasons for that, and the reasons are different in different companies. When we get into companies to try and help them, so often they have tried something before. It's usually because we try to jump over the basics that I've been talking about. The second thing that clients find difficult to accept is that success is 80% behaviors and only 20% tools. It is this relentless focus on continuous improvement, treating people with respect, goal alignment, and then you use the tools. So once you have this foundation, we're ready. Then you can read the books, you can go to the conferences, and you can listen to all the other consultants who talk about fourth industrial revolution, agile supply chain management, environment-friendly solutions, sustainability, Internet of Things, all these modern things, great techniques, robotics, Scrum, Agile, big data. All of these are fantastic tools and principles, but you cannot build them unless you have a strong foundation. And that foundation is world-class And world class will never go out of fashion. It's like arithmetic. No matter how much we introduce the fourth industrial revolution, arithmetic will always be important. Thank you, and I'm open for questions on anything. The struggle continues. That expression, a luta continua, it came from the Mozambique Civil War, where the two sides eventually signed for peace and then said, the struggle continues. We are always looking for better ways. Thank you.
Excelente, muchas gracias, Ian. Hay un par de preguntas, sin embargo, algo que nos queda y que debemos de comprender es que realmente no es el dinero lo que nos hace una empresa de clase mundial, ¿verdad? Tenemos que ver, Ian nos ha hecho un recorrido histórico, pero sobre todo casuístico de aquellas empresas que han sido consideradas como clase mundial y que no lo han sido, ¿verdad? Y nos lleva a esa reflexión de ver efectivamente que el dinero no es el éxito, ¿verdad? Que ser el mejor en su clase, invertir en la clase no es lo mejor, que tenemos que irnos a la declaración de la misión de la empresa, ¿verdad? No es eso, todos aquellos aspectos de la gerencia por objetivos, sino que efectivamente cómo vernos y cómo visorarnos en tener una organización con propósito, ¿verdad? De esa declaración de la misión, de sistema que escuche a los colaboradores, que mejoremos los procesos, que desarrollemos a las personas, que veamos en esa empresa, en nuestra organización, esa cultura, esos valores, ¿verdad? No por dinero, no por herramientas. Aquí nos tienen algunas preguntas. ¿Cómo podemos convencer a los empresarios que desarrollar a sus colaboradores es una prioridad? Sí, ya veo.
If questions can come through the interpreter, it will be easier for me.
Sí, efectivamente. En el caso, la pregunta que le mencionaba, ¿cómo podemos convencer a los empresarios que desarrollar a sus colaboradores es una prioridad? ¿No escucha la intérprete? Si nos colabora Lena. Ah, ya, eso es. Gracias. Bueno, esa es parte de la tecnología y de las oportunidades de mejora, ¿verdad? Que nosotros debemos de también ver. Miren, con las dificultades de ingresar, de darle a la traducción simultánea, todo ese aprendizaje. Cada día, pues debemos de aprender, ¿verdad? De herramientas, mejoras, oportunidades de mejoras.
I see that I've had a translation provided for me here. A question, how can we help management to develop their employees? You can't make somebody learn, but you can make somebody want to learn if you set the environment for them. They have got to feel that they're making a contribution. They've got to be recognized. I remember I started working in a company in Honduras in 2004. And people told me, nobody here wants to do this. And they told me about the difficult labor environment. Several years later, at the same client, people were telling me that the workers are saying, when are we doing the next module? Because they wanted to learn. You've got to make the workplace fun. They've got to feel they made a contribution. They've got to see it reflected. They've got to know that if they get an impossible task, that management is there to help them. And all of that creation is the key to putting in a world-class system. You don't tell them what to do. People want to. People, in the book Leading by Respect by Bale and Bale, one of the things they say is people have a right to do well, not an expectation or responsibility to do well. They have a right. They should demand it, and they will. Let them.
Otra pregunta, cuando existe una reingeniería y se aplica automatización de procesos, ¿esto puede perjudicar la cultura de una empresa?
I see in the questions in the chat area here that my colleague Rosa has been very helpful and has answered some of the questions for me. I thank you very much for that.
La otra pregunta sería, ¿cuál considera que es el mayor impedimento que tienen las empresas de Latinoamérica para lograr ese éxito del que habla y para lograr el éxito en la aplicación de las 4P que mencionó?
I see another question coming through. Thank you very much. What do we consider to be the greatest barrier, I guess, for American companies to achieve success? I don't know how to say this politely, but I think it's maybe arrogance. Because we believe that we are better than others. And I know I've worked all around the world. I have found it harder in the United States than I have in Latin America and Southeast Asia. They have had more of a hunger to learn instead of a belief that they can do it themselves. But in the United States now, more and more and more companies are seeing the light, and they're world class. They're getting there. But certainly over the years, we found it so much harder in North America than we did in Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, even in Ecuador, Peru. It's interesting.
Doctor, tenemos una pregunta. ¿Qué empresas de clase mundial existen en Honduras y en Latinoamérica?
Can someone translate that, please? Which companies are world-class in Latin America or Honduras? I don't know all the companies, but I know that we work for several companies. My only client in Honduras was Cervecería Hondureña. When they started, they were very far down Sab Miller's list of companies. They have a grading, and when they finished, they were right up at the top. They did an absolutely unbelievable job. And other countries where SAB was represented have in fact sent their people to Honduras to learn. They did a first-class job. Now the company has been bought by AB. I don't know what's happening. I hope it still continues.
Otra pregunta, todos sabemos que la competencia interna en compañías es necesaria, pero cuando la competitividad ya no es sana y el ambiente laboral se ve perjudicado.
I see another, yeah. Now, internal competition, that's a very interesting question. It's all up to management style. And I don't like seeing individuals competing with individuals. I don't mind seeing sites trying to be excellent, but I'm very much against individual goals in a company. I believe we're all in the same team together, like a football team. And if one of the team has fallen over, someone else will try and save the ball and get in there. And to have the people competing against each other is not constructive. I prefer us to compete against standards, to compete against competitors, to compete against what we perceive to be excellence, and to say we are achieving a changeover time of 13 minutes in our machines. I would like to aim for 9 minutes. See who can get to 9 minutes first. That is the competition I like, not one shift against another. If one shift is doing well, they should help the other. I see salespeople who are incentivized and they are paid on sales. So the salesman who is achieving 110% of his budget goals is working to get 111. Another salesman is selling only 70%. It would be better if the excellent salesman helps the salesman who is struggling to go from 70 to 90 instead of trying to go from 110 to 111. Unfortunately, it is standard in the sales industry that people expect performance-based pay and they put themselves before the company. That's the world we live in.
Tenemos una última pregunta.
I see a question here about what is the goal to drive us towards world class. We should be getting driven towards world class, not by money, but by our mission statement. And if the mission statement is something that aids society, a real purpose statement, then fantastic. That should be our driver, and the money will come. The money will come if you're doing the right thing. But if you focus just on the money, it will not come.
Bueno, agradecemos mucho a Ian por todo. Aquí podríamos estar toda la tarde hablando. Sin embargo, seguimos pues compartiendo y pues reiterando nuestro agradecimiento a Ian por este tema tan importante para ser de clase mundial. Así que agradecemos su presencia, su colaboración, esas respuestas tan categóricas a cada una de esas preguntas. Así que agradeciendo también a todos los que estuvieron presentes. Hasta luego.
Saludo, Diane.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for all those who are trying to help with the technology.
Saludos.
Adiós.
Muchas gracias a todos. Nos vemos en la plataforma en 10 minutos.
Thank you.